What is up, fellow web developers? My name is Tyler Potts, and in today's video we're going to be discussing CSS buttons. Now, button animations, should I say. Now, these are the sort of button animations you get on every single site. It's something basic, but you do learn a lot. So let's quickly go over the buttons we're going to be learning today. Button number one is going to be a simple button highlight. So when you hover over a button, it highlights. The second will be a cool sliding from the right side, and you can even do this from the left side. You just reverse the CSS. And you've got the button from down below, again another different type of button. You've then got this third button, which is kind of like a popping out button. It's kind of popping out, and when you hover over it, it's slightly pressing, but then when you click it, you actually push it down. So it's like you're actually pressing the button. And finally, this is my favorite button, a fancy pantsy button, which we'll do at the end. And as you can see here, you do this highlight and you get this crossover sort of thing. So it kind of, I really like it. It's like crossing over the borders and a thingy. I actually did this by accident one time and just decided to use it quite a lot in my new web builds. But, you know, I think it looks kind of cool. So we're going to be doing that today, guys. Don't forget, if you like this video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up, smash the subscribe button and ring the bell. It really does help out, guys. And without further ado, let's crack on with the rest of this video. Welcome back. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to stop the old surfer. I'm going to move out of this folder and I'm going to create a new directory calling it button CSS. Now if I cd into button CSS, oh that's not it, cd into button CSS, we can then run some, well, we can actually open it up in VS Code if you have the path set up. If not, just drag the folder and drop it into your VS Code. I'm just going to move this up into here. There we go. And the first files we're going to create is index.html. We're then going to create up main.css. But the first thing we're going to write in here is we're going to press exclamation mark tab. And this is going to give us this boilerplate code. Let's zoom in a little here and remove the sidebar. We don't need that right now. That should be good enough. Hopefully you can see that fine. What I'm going to do is just call the title CSS buttons. And down here, we're just going to say link, and I'm going to link this to main CSS. So all our style sheet is now hooked in, and that's all set up. So one of the first things we're going to do is create a button container, just so we can align the buttons to the center. This isn't a part of the actual tutorial, it's just to help. Now, we're going to create buttons, but I'm going to use an actual button element, but you can actually use an anchor tag with the same class, or even a span or a div or whatever element you want to use that you need to use. The CSS is the main part. The HTML is just what we're going to be styling. So here we're just going to create buttons using a button class, and they're all going to have their own button as well. So here we're just going to call this button. I might even put one in here. We're going to set button 2, finally button 5. Now we've got all our buttons set up. We actually need to run a surfer. So I'm going to say HTTP surfer. Now to get this, you need to have Node installed. And what you need to run is npm-i-g HTTP surfer. And once that is ran and installed, you can then run this command, HTTP surfer, in the directory you want to surf as static files. Hit enter and it will start a static surfer. Now this is not necessary. You can just double click the index.html file to open it, but I want to show what happens there. So if we go over it and we just refresh over here, you can see we have button 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So let's go into our CSS and start styling. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the margin to 0 and the padding to 0 for everything. I always like to reset my stuff, and border box 0. We're then going to set the font family for everything to be Montserrat and sans serif. Now I have this installed on my machine, so I don't need to import anything, but if you want to use the same font, you'll need to use Google Fonts to install it. I'm not going to go over that today. I just wanted to make sure the buttons look pretty. Cool, so that's all set up, and as you can see, it's all done. Now we need to get our button container, and we just need to style this up. So what we're going to do is we're going to center all the buttons using Flexbox. Again, not part of the actual tutorial for the buttons, but just so we can align them into the middle. So we're just going to give it a width of 100%, a min height of 100 VH, a justify content center, and a line item center. Cool, so if we go back here, we refresh, you can see they're now all in the center of the page, which is perfect. Now, what we want to do next is actually style each individual button. Well, we want to style all the buttons at once. So we're going to just reset the actual button class. Now, if you're using an anchor tag or an A tag or anything else, you probably don't need to do these first 4 lines of code, because these are actually just to reset the standard button styling. So we're just going to set background to none, border to none, and also outline to none. Now if we save this and we go back, you can see they're now just plain text. We also want another thing called cursor. Oh, cursor, pointer, and hit save. Cool, there we go. So now when we hover over, we get the cursor item. Now each one of our buttons is going to have a padding of 20 pixels and 40 pixels on the left and right. A border radius, oh that's just a border radius of about 8 pixels each. And finally we're going to set it all with a colour of 212121, just a dark grey. A font size of 28 pixels, a font weight of 600, which is semi-bold for me for Montserrat, and a margin of 0.15 pixels. And we also want a transition of 0.4 seconds. Now we might change this for a couple of the buttons, but for now that's it. So if we just hit save, you can see the buttons have all grown out and they all now look good. So that's just how big our button's going to be. That's fine. That's all good. That's looking fine. Now we want to style button number 1. So down here, we're just going to say button -1. And we're actually just going to set the colour of this to FFCE00. We're then going to set the border to about 3 pixels solid. Oh, that's 3p. I don't know what that's going to do. You could buy 3 penny sweets. A border of this, and if we go back and refresh, you can see this button now looks like a button. The issue is, obviously, when you hover over it does nothing, so it makes you feel like the button doesn't actually do anything. So we're going to use the CSS pseudo element of hover, and we actually need to do button 1. And in hover, we're going to basically just say, we're going to set the color to white, because we want the text to change, and the background color to the same color as our border. Now, if we save this, and we go back and we refresh. Now, if we highlight over the button, you can see we've already got button 1 done. Now, let me just quickly explain this. So we've got button 1, border 3 pixels. So it's a simple border. Obviously, we've got our default styling for our buttons here. And then the second thing is all we're doing is changing the background color to be from transparent, which is actually none, all the way over to FFCE00. Now the transition does all the heavy lifting. This transition key element here allows it so when you hover, it doesn't just snap. So let me just comment this out quickly, just so we can do a thing. I know most people know this, but you can see that snaps. We don't like that. I mean, some people do. I don't. I like a little fade. So there you go. You got that fade in, and that's nice. Now you can change the values of this and stuff, but for now we're just going to leave it at default. So we've got button number 1 done. Let's do button 2. Now button 2 is obviously a lot more styled. It actually doesn't take a background color, it takes a background image and a linear gradient. Now I'll explain that in a second. First, let's get the color set. So we're going to use FE4880. Now there's a nice little pink, and we're going to do the border again, the exact same thing as before. Border 3 pixels solid, but this time we're using a different color, which is fine for me. We're going to get a background image though, and we're going to say linear gradient. Now what we're doing here is we're going to say we want the linear gradient to go to the right. We want the start of the gradient to be transparent, and we want it to stop at 50%. So we want it to start, the gradient to start from 50%. We then want to go to FE4880 again, and we also want this to start from 50%. So what's going to happen here is, because we're setting it at 50%, there's just going to be a direct line. Because these numbers are the exact same, we're literally splitting what is here. So if we save this and we go back and we refresh, you'll see we've got half a button and not. Now what we need to do is we need to move this pink slightly over to the right. So to do that, we actually need to make the background size bigger. So we're going to say background size 200%. We're then going to say, oh, that's a $sign, not $200, although if you're willing, I will take it. And then background position, we need to set to 0%. So if we go back here and we refresh, you can see now it's not there, but off screen, that pink button color is now hiding over here on this side. But we can't see that. Now to mute, what we're going to do is go do another button 2, and we're going to hover it again. Now what happens in this hover is all we're going to do is we're going to change the color of the font to white, because we want to be able to see the font. But what we're going to do is we're going to change the background position from 0% to 100%. Now what this is going to do is it's going to move the whole background position over, as you can see, thingy. So all what's happening here is we're moving the transparent color from this side and we're pushing it over here, which in turn, because it's 200%, makes the pink fill the whole button color. Now that is just one really awesome trick. Now we're going to do the same trick and apply it to going up and down on button 3. So let's do that here. So we're going to go button 3, And obviously for button 3, we need a color. This color is actually a green, so we're just going to say 68DE A0. We're then going to set a border of 3 pixels, solid, and again, the same color. We're going to get a background gradient or background image. Hello, image. There we go. And we're going to set linear gradient to top. Well, you could also do to bottom, whichever way you want it to come in. And we're going to say here 68. This time we'll start. That's not the right color. 68DE A0. And we're going to set it at 50% again. We're then going to do transparent like we did in the last one. And do this at 50% as well. Now, as you can see, these two are the opposite way around to what we did up here. You can swap these round and change that to bottom, and it will come from the top. But obviously, we're just doing it from the bottom upwards right now. We're then going to do the background size. Why is my... Oh, God. Autocorrect hates me sometimes, guys. We're at background size, and we're just going to set this to 100% on the X value, but 200% on the Y value, because this time we're going in the opposite direction. So there's something slightly different here, as you can see, because this first value is always the X position, whereas this second value is now the Y position for up and down. And then we need to set another background position of this, and we're setting it 0% and 0%. We need double here because we're doing the Y value. So as you've probably guessed, for button 3's hover event, we need to set the color to white, and the background position, we're keeping the X at the same. So we're just going to set it to 0%, but we're also going to make the top percent go 100% up. Now, if we just quickly save this and go back, you can see we've got button 3, and as you hover it, it comes up. Now, let me just quickly demonstrate if we change this to bottom, what would happen, and we refresh. See, it starts off as pink, and then we highlight it to white. So, we've actually gone back. But to fix that, all we'd have to do is swap these around. So if we go here, and I just delete that, and then I put a comma and paste this at the end, and we refresh, you can see it now comes from... I don't think that's coming from the right way. Did I do that wrong? No, that's right, right? Oh, my bad. I was meant to say this needs to be at 100%, and this needs to be at 0%. And then we need to actually put this back to top, save, and there you go. Now it comes from the top. Sorry, I forgot to flip around the background position as well. Actually, it now comes from the top as well. So now you just do it from the straight fade, right side and left side if you flip it around, and top and bottom. Now, the next button is obviously more of the 3D button. So button 4 is slightly different. We're going to make use of box shadows. So I'm going to say button 4. And to start this, we're just going to give it a color of FFF, a background color of 68AODE. No, that's a green, isn't it? No, that is a blue. That is a blue. We're then going to say box shadow of inset 0 minus 8 pixels 00 RGBA 0 0 0, and this one is 0.2. So if we hit save and we go back in here and we refresh, you can see we've already got that bottom button bit, which is perfect. That's cool. I'm actually going to do a transition on this of 0.1 seconds because we want this to be really quick. We don't want it to take slow because else it will look like you're pressing the button really slow. We need it to be quite a quick action. So that's all good. We're also going to add a text shadow just to give the text like a sort of 3D effect too. So we're going to say 0 pixels, 3 pixels. I'm literally just going to copy this RGBA here. Paste that in, remove the second semicolon and refresh. There you go. So the button's now got a bit of depth too. So let's go to the button 4 and hover state. Now, all we're going to do in the button hover state is we're going to set the box shadow to be -6 instead of -8. So now if we go back and we hover, you can see the button slightly drops down, which is cool. But now we need one last state. So there is now a third state to this, and we need an active because on click you want to make it look like it's actually doing something. And you want it to go all the way in. So I'm actually going to leave it at -1. Just so you can see what happens here. So now when I click it, it goes all the way down. So the button looks like it's actually being clicked. We also need to make the text shadow disappear as well, because obviously the shadow is going to change for both. So I need to go 0 pixels, 1 pixel and then RGBA 0.2 there. Save and go here, and as you can see, when you click, it's like the button is being pressed. So for button 5, what we're going to do is I'm just going to say position relative, and from position relative, that's all we need for this one, because we don't actually want to change. We want it to look like this default thing here that does nothing. And then when you go down, we're just going to say button, and we're actually going to use the after attributes. Now, I could explain everything about the after attribute, but I think for the purpose of this video, we don't actually need to. You can just have a look at what I do and just guess. Now, content is required for each after and before element, so we're going to add that in there. We're going to give it a position of absolute, and a width of 0 and a height of 0. Now, we're actually going to do this for both the before and after and before. Okay, guys. So once we've added in these positions, we're also going to add in a new transition, because we don't want it to be the exact same. We actually want to use the opacity to move at 0.1 seconds. Sorry, everything else is 0.4, but the opacity we want to be 0.1 seconds with a delay of 0.4 seconds. Now, that is the same delay as how long our transition is, because we want it to apply instantly once we have finished the thing. And you'll understand soon. So we're going to set the opacity of them to 0. Now I'm going to go to button after element, and for this one we're actually going to add a bottom of 0 and a right of 0. So we're going to add in border bottom, and we're going to set this to 3 pixels solid, and we're going to set it to the 212121 because we want it to be quite dark. We also want to do the exact same for border right. I think, yes, perfect. So we then need to do button, oh god, we need to actually do this as button 5. Same with this and this, else we will highlight every time we have any of them, we're going to have some issues. So we're going to do before, and I'm going to set this to top 0 and left 0. We're then going to do border left at 3 pixel solid 212121 and border top yes 212121. Cool. So we've got that done, and that should be everything for both of these. Now what we want to do is we want to go to button hover, and on hover we want to affect the button 5, and then we're going to copy this and paste the exact same thing, removing that bottom bit and changing this to before. So what we're going to do now is we're going to update both of these, and what we're going to say is we want the width to be 100%. Now this actually isn't the final value for this. We actually need to change it, but I just want to show you what happens if we just do 100%. And we do transition 0.4 and opacity as 0.1 seconds. Now this is required as well, and we also want the opacity to be 1 once we get here. So this actually isn't the final value. I just want to show you what happens. So let's go over here, refresh, and now look what happens when we hover. You can see they go across, and they kind of touch, but they go slightly over. But we kind of want to stretch out a bit more than the 100%. Now the reason they go slightly over currently is because we're using 3 pixel border width, so they're actually 3 pixels over the line. Now we actually want these to be either between 10 and 15 pixels to give them that nice sort of effect. Sorry, I accidentally backed out there. So you can go there and you can see that. So that's still a cool effect. I'm going to quickly show you another thing quick. So if we go to calc, we're going to use the function called calc, and we're actually going to minus 3 pixels. Now we actually need to add 3 pixels, but we're going to minus it for now so you can see what would happen there. As you can see, now the lines match up perfectly, so there's no overlap or anything like that, and it's just like a normal button. So if you wanted just this effect, you could just have this effect, but personally I prefer to change this to a plus, and we're going to change this to about, let's say 10 pixels, or we'll go 15 pixels. You can always shrink that down if that's too high. Let's refresh. So you got the first button, the second button, third button, the fourth button, and the fifth button finally slides out and creates this cool little effect. Now, I think this is absolutely awesome, but what do you guys think? Do you like this button, or do you prefer like the standard buttons over here, or even just the press down button? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. So this is the end of this video, guys. Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up, smash the subscribe button, ring the bell, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you all for watching. I hope you learned something new, and peace out.